You're on 121.5, the emergency frequency.
Welcome to the 21.5 Show, a podcast for professional pilots by professional pilots. Join Dylan and Max, both with experience in flight instruction, the airlines, and business aviation, as they talk to a variety of industry experts, share stories, and have a little fun along the way.
Airport to airport, FBO to FBO, and around the terminal area.
Anyway, welcome to the 21.5 podcast, the podcast for professional pilots by some semi-professional pilots.
Hello, everybody. Big show today. Lots to talk about. You know, Max, a lot of podcasts record way in advance and then air like an entire season and stuff like that.
Why would you do that? That seems ridiculous to me.
We didn't even have we had some other plans for this episode, and I know we've been talking about doing the bidding stuff and all this, but there's so much hiring news going on right now.
That's what I like.
We had to pivot.
I like to keep it fresh.
Yeah. So we decided to change direction. So we've got our old friend James Onieal calling in later to explain all of the hiring news, regionals, low-cost carriers, even the majors are
cargo. Whole deal. So he'll be in to chat about that and give advice to a bunch of different pilots in different phases of their career in a little rapid fire session. So that was good talk.
And then, of course, we had to talk about that very controversial United Airlines training deal as well. So lots to look forward to there. But before we get into that, let's recognize a couple of the folks supporting the show right now.
Let's do it.
Zach R. made a very generous contribution. We appreciate that. And then Mark L. did a little donation, and he's actually our pilot listener on this new project I'm working on. So on the social medias, you may have seen that we made those 21.5 tumblers. Did you see that?
Yes.
And we gave one to your co-pilot Christian, and he put it out on his network as well. And then folks started messaging us, and they wanted one. So we ordered some. And basically what we're going to do is, if you want one, if you can make a $75 donation on the website, we'll send you one.
Yeah, it's a Yeti tumbler with our logo.
Really cool. So that'll help us support the show a little bit and give you a nice little thing to pour some. I do bourbon in mine. That's my preference. I don't know what you're putting in yours.
Whatever's available.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah. So
it's very versatile.
Yeah. So you can send us a message or an email, and we can walk you through how to do it, but it's pretty easy. All on our website down at the very bottom, 215podcast.com, there's a little donate to the show button. So thanks for everyone for the support. We really appreciate it.
Then we have some reviews. This one titled Entertaining and Informative Excellence. Listening to this podcast feels like you're having a really good conversation with fellow professional, likable pilots while hanging out in the FBO. The information, especially during times of crisis in the industry, is paramount, and the guest speakers are industry leaders filled with knowledge and excellent advice. This is simply the best professional aviation podcast. Thank you, Dylan and Max. That's from KA350 Pimp. I like
King Air 350. That's strong. That's very strong. Got through the Apple filters. Good work. Next one says, fan for life. There is no better way to spend my commute than chuckling along with Dylan and Max and their guests. Regale me with titillating tales, aviation news, and insights. Thanks for all the efforts. The show is tops. And that's from Yilstar.
So this is probably in the top 3, at least, of reviews.
Hold on. Read the title first. They wrote that on the title. That's actually on the title.
Oh, that's the title?
Yeah.
Okay, the title is Depressing Piano Music. Do you love listening to pilots talking about memes? Do you find humor in mocking vanity license plates? Are you intrigued by phantom nosewheel issues? Can you tolerate the above being rudely interrupted by quality career discussion? There may be help and compensation available to you. By Who Am I? 12876.
That was outstanding. There's only one correction that I need to make to that on the compensation available. I actually have the login to the 21.5 bank account. There is no compensation available. Take my word for it. Awesome reviews from everybody. We really appreciate it. Thank you for those.
I'm glad he put in the depressing piano music. I wouldn't have even thought to put that to the review.
That was, I know.
That made it 10 times better.
That was the title of the actual review. It was pretty amazing.
So good.
Yeah. Mailbag is next. A lot of good emails, actually, some long ones here, but I think they're pretty useful. So we're going to go through them. First off, one of our favorite listeners, Grant, sent us in an email. He's working on a Coeur d'Alene destination guide. So he sent me some suggestions. I'm going to make that. And then if anyone else has anything they want to add to Coeur d'Alene,
Perfect.
we'll have a link for that once we get it all up and go and send us your additions. Here's one for you to read.
Dylan and Max, gents, congrats to the wedding. Thank you. I think Dylan put that on the social media sites, but we took the week off because I got married in Telluride. last
Woohoo!
week.
Congratulations.
Thank you. During a recent 4-hour leg in the Pilatus, I thought up some show ideas for you. What's going on inside the Tracon/ARTCC right now? On a recent flight into KSSI on a Monday, which is a busy vacation destination and uncontrolled, multiple training aircraft were denied practice approaches. Are the centers still social distancing? Will this constrain ATC capacity going forward? Also, Guard was a clown show on one recent flight. What can we do to fix and or professionalize this frequency?
Nothing.
Does anybody want to?
I don't. That's why you tell the listeners the sticker you have on your laptop. I don't know if we ever released these to the public, but I made these stickers that said F Guard Monitor 21.5 or something.
Oh, I didn't put that on my laptop like as a statement.
I know.
Basically, my wife and I had the exact same looking laptop, and I took hers before. And we've had this happen a couple times. I'm like, I'm done with this, and so I went, and the only sticker I had were those ones, and I slapped one on there. But,
I don't know. I don't think there's anything that's going to fix Guard.
yeah, you put a bunch of professionals that are seemingly a large portion of them immature for their age in a small confined space for hours at a time with really nothing to do.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? I mean,
Good luck. Yeah.
It's like taking our kids and putting them in a toy store and telling them not to touch anything. It's just
Exactly. His last suggestion says, I'd love for you to chat with a local midsize or larger FBO manager. What would the FBO like their pilots and clients to know? What's it like to manage the infrastructure we rely on daily? And that's from Matt. Thanks, Matt, for the suggestions. Pretty interesting FBO stuff. That's my biggest regret is not working in as an FBO. When I was younger, I really wish I would have learned that side of the business.
I did that. I checked that box.
I know. I wish I would have.
It was pretty funny though. You know, normally you think of like up and coming male pilots as working as what at an FBO? What position?
Oh, line service.
Yeah. So I applied at this FBO and it was for the summer home from college. And they gave me an option. They're like, well, we really need customer service too, or line. So which one do you want to do? And I wanted to do line service, obviously, but I'm like, this summer in Phoenix, I'm like, I'll do customer service. So I worked inside in the air conditioning, but it was a blast.
Refilling the popcorn machine.
And the thing too is like in Phoenix, obviously the slow time is in the summertime. Yeah. So we would just, some days we would just hang out. This is at Sky Harbor. And it was hilarious. We would get this like baggage cart and we'd have races down the hallway, like using it like a skateboard and then whip out the automatic doors. And then we'd go to the store. We'd have the barbecue and buy a bunch of food and just grill and just hang out. It was a pretty good time.
I always anytime we're talking to folks just getting started in the career, I always recommend the FBO job if they can get it.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I still didn't even know how to drive a tug. I hate to make that.
Really? I guess I didn't either until I had a couple jobs where I had to learn how. But
do you not know how to drive Electro?
You can back up a trailer. That's pretty good.
Last email. This was a funny one I got. It said, Dylan, why didn't you tell me you were doing this? I love it. When I can't sleep at night, you are my go-to podcast. Funny and informative. Brian said you guys were nerds. I disagree. My one-word description, impressive. And that came from, my best friend, Brian.
Yeah.
Growing up. That came from his mom, Barb. So thank you for the email, Barb.
Shout out, Barb. Yeah. Respect. Go back to bed.
Yeah, exactly. Go to sleep. There's plenty of... I actually recommend that Sleepwalk. I think it's called Sleepwalk with Me podcast. Have you ever heard that one? That's one that's like actually made to help people sleep. Works good, especially if you're on like you're flying on the backside of the clock or you got a super early overnight. It's this, I don't know how to explain it. It's this guy that reads these stories or tells these stories, and he specifically does it in a way with like, he stutters and he the way he talks, it's a very deliberate cadence that actually puts you to sleep. I'll put a link in the show notes because it is really good. Our boy Roy actually was the one who told us about it.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's what I was just going to say. This is about as interesting as aviation memes.
Yeah.
And
No. But this
I'm
is
so
like
not surprised this came from Roy.
But I think it's actually useful for folks.
All right.
Because
Listen,
it does
don't
put you
knock
to sleep.
until you tried it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
So try that one, Barb.
and Roy has come out with some very
Yeah.
strong on the road tips.
Yeah.
I'll give him that.
Yeah. I'll put a link. I can't remember. It's like Sleep With Me or Sleepwalk With Me or
And
something.
some pretty good backcountry flying tips.
That's right.
in his organization.
Begrudgingly. So,
I know.
all right.
I hate to admit it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for reaching out, Barb. We really appreciate that. So I have a little scenario. You've actually been trying to help me figure this out. My wife next week is going to be on the road. And
God, we had so many good plans,
I know.
too.
And I got a pop-up trip, which is good. I'm happy to be going flying. But it put us in a little crunch because we got a couple little kiddos and childcare is kind of tricky. And it just reminded me the importance of, if you're a professional pilot, there is a huge importance on having your significant other or your primary child caregiver for your children need to be available, right, for you to be able to do your job. And it reminded me of what we've talked about before with making sure that that person is insured. Because if something were to ever happen to them and you're a professional pilot, your ability to do your job would be greatly hindered. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, it's basically your insuring against that increase in expense of trying to find, hiring a full-time nanny, essentially, right? Or someone that can stay over. And that person, not necessarily your wife, or it could be
husband, whoever,
your
mom, could be your mom. Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. Yeah, but it was important. So I just remembered why it's important to have that protection. I get mine through Harvey Watt. They have life insurance. It's very reasonable. There's almost zero exclusions except suicide, and they even waive that after a couple years. You can still go fly your GA airplane if you got it. Skydive. All the things that
Scuba dive.
Yeah, all the things that pilots like to do. HarveyWatt.com for more information. Of course, they do all the loss of medical license insurance as well. All right, flight advice.
Talk to me.
You want the long one or the short one? Okay, we're going to do the short one this episode because we're giving a lot more advice with James in a few minutes. All right. This is from our friend. We're not going to use his name, but he sends a message via Facebook. He goes, "Hey, you guys, need some advice. I just passed eval for captain job at, we're just going to say this is a carrier that flies PC-12s. Don't know when training starts because they're doing the whole process again. So I guess he passed an eval, but he's not sure when he's going to upgrade. He has a buddy at FlexJet that said they're going to be hiring, and he's trying to decide if he should put his stuff in at FlexJet and go fly over there and get a pretty significant pay bump, or stick around and fly the single-engine turboprop as a captain. But he hasn't gotten the upgrade yet, but he thinks he's going to get the upgrade. I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
No, actually, I think you don't. This is a kind of a tough one because normally I would say they go to flex because single engine turbine time has proven to not be that valuable. But, this is actually a better question for James, honestly. But the thing is that via our conversation, which you'll hear in a little bit, he indicated that airlines are starting to recognize some forms of single engine turbine and add it into the same as like multi-engine turbine. Because I think that is kind of an archaic deal where there didn't used to be single engine turbine airplanes that were flown professionally very often, right?
Right. And
now they're becoming more prevalent. So that's a hard, honestly, I think we need to get James's advice because it all depends. Turbine PIC is paramount, right? When you're trying to move up in the world. And so if that PC-12 time is going to be looked at differently now, and it depends on what he's trying to do. Right. He didn't really tell us what his end goal is. So that's a hard one too. I don't know. What do you think?
My advice was to apply to FlexJet.
I think that's probably the move, but I don't know for sure. Do you?
Well, no. And well, you didn't let me finish. My advice was apply to FlexJet. This is your classic line. You're so far away from actually getting the job at FlexJet. I mean, in reality, he doesn't even really have a decision to make right now. Tell the listeners, when do you have a decision to make?
This is what he's saying this because I've had this talk with Dylan several times where Dylan gets himself really tied in knots about like making decisions and what the owners are going to think if he leave. He's a nice guy. Sometimes he's a little bit too nice of a guy. So I've had this. I'll never forget. I was in a hotel in Florida. I don't know why I remember that, and you were trying to figure out if you're going to take this King Air job and what was the you didn't have a job. You were a driving instructor. And what were you worried about, though? You were worried about...
Well, I knew that I would probably be able to get a different job.
Oh, that's right. And I'm like, what? I go, dude, what different job? Like, you have no other options right now. You have one option to go fly an airplane. Take that and don't worry about other stuff that's not even on the table. Like, when you have a decision to make, then you make it. Don't try and make decisions before there's a decision to be made. And in your case, there was no other job. You had one job. You take that. And in his case, you're right. There's no offer on the table from FlexJet. He's already overthinking it way down the road about whether to apply. Apply, and if you don't get the job, then you have no decision to make. Yeah. If you do apply and you get a job offer, then make a decision. And honestly, as a non-sponsored, non-paid person, I would call James. Because he does have insight on the big picture of this stuff and be like, what's best if I want to do X? And if that's go work at United Airlines, that's one thing. If you want to be a Part 91 Gulfstream captain, that's another thing. And I think those...
Right. And I knew when I put this in, we didn't have enough information to correctly advise him. If he said, I have 2 job offers, which should I do? And that wasn't the point of this conversation. The point was exactly what you just covered.
I can't believe I didn't even give my own advice.
I know.
You had to give it.
I was waiting for you to give it, and you didn't even give it. So that's it.
You teed it up.
I teed it up.
I couldn't even take the bait. It's good though. See, Grasshopper, you've learned.
Exactly.
Listen to you.
So Max's famous line, we should just make this into a sticker too, is don't say no until you have something to say no to.
Don't make a decision until there's actually something to make a decision about.
Exactly. So that's flight advice.
Good advice, Dylan.
Yeah. Sponsored by Eagle Careers.
Eagle Careers, Raven Careers' largest competitor. That's right. Slowly gaining market share at a snail's pace.
Okay, we'll save the other one.
Just kidding, James.
Damien wrote us in a really good one, and we'll save that for next episode because I don't want to shortchange him. All right, let's get to the main event. But before we do that, I wanted to mention our other sponsor, Advanced Aircrew Academy. They have that blog. And I was cruising around on it. You know, we did an entire episode on a blog post they did about the runway excursions a few episodes ago. And I found a post that I thought was pretty interesting, and it was on bribery in business aviation. Kind of.
Do tell.
So they wrote out a bunch of scenarios, and it was really well written. So you're an FBO on the road, something breaks. You got to call in a mechanic on the weekend, holiday weekend or whatever. And they go, yeah, we'll do that. But there's going to be, an inconvenience fee of $500 or whatever it is to do that. Or it's a cash fee, or there's going to be some type of deal to get the mission completed. And obviously, most folks are going to do that. And then they talk about, another scenario, you're at customs and you show up a few minutes late and you offer to pay, some type of facility fee to keep it open or whatever. And in certain countries, you can get thrown in jail for doing that. And
like this one?
Yeah, exactly.
But in some countries,
so
that's what you have to do.
So their point was like, there's kind of like, it's almost the same thing, these two things. And one's like very accepted and one's like very taboo. In bribery, I mean, there's all sorts of anti-bribery laws in many countries. And as an international operator, it's kind of a fine line to walk. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And you just have to know where that's accepted. Not only is it accepted, it's expected in certain places.
Sure.
I mean, one place that starts with Cabo and ends with Lucas.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say the full name.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, that place, you got to give the Commandante some juice or things aren't going to go very quick.
Yeah.
It's just, and so I definitely wouldn't attempt to bribe U.S. Customs.
No. And that article wasn't talking about U.S. Customs. It was talking about a different country.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah,
it was just more like highlighting a scenario of like, oh, you pay a mechanic last minute to come out, and then you. Anyways, so they actually had some really good insight on the blog about like trying to establish some company policies, more so to help you as the pilot if you get caught into some type of a situation where they're like, oh, you need to pay this fee or that fee or whatever. You can be like, look, my company only authorizes up to X amount for a unexpected fee or whatever. So they just had some different ways that you could attack it.
That's good.
Yeah.
Negotiating.
And then obviously I think the other part is too, and it really ties into a lot of their international operations training that they offer, is like being aware of the bribery laws and like things you might do in one country might not work in another.
Yeah, for sure.
So anyways, really good stuff. So Advanced Aircrew Academy, really love the stuff they're putting out, not just the classes and the modules you do, but their blog posts, and just made me really think. So kind of cool. I'll have a link to that article in the show notes. But anyways, let's get on to the main event. Our 15-minute conversation with James that turned into an hour.
What else is new? And now, industry update with James Onieal and Raven Careers, our source for the most up-to-date industry information.
Welcome back, James.
Hopefully I won't be threatened for being too positive. The excitement is palpable.
Yes, it's amazing. Oh, actually, we've seen some encouraging news in the industry in the last week or two, so we'd love to chat with you and hear about your thoughts on all of the big announcements.
Well, I've got about 3 people on staff who tear their hair out every day because I ask them, because we do internal client presentations and we're doing presentations for different organizations. And they're constantly having to change the slides. Oh, now they're hiring. Oh, now they're hiring this many. So it's like the world opened up 2 weeks ago, and now we gotta move at a million miles an hour. So
it's amazing how things turn around.
For anyone new to the industry, that saying of furlough till you hire exists for a reason. It was earned.
I mean, literally,
it's unbelievable. It's so crazy. All right, what do you got for us, James?
No, look, I mean, there's a boatload of hiring. At the ultra low cost, like you got Frontier, they're bringing on 200. 100 of those are going to be from the CJOs they offered last year, the conditional job offers, and you got 100 new hires. They started interviewing end of March, and they've got interview dates posted out through April. Spirit's doing about 400 to 450. JetBlue is bringing back, I think it's like a little over 200 folks from last year that they hired. They're putting them through the phase 2 background checks. Southwest today just announced that they're bringing back all their flight attendants from extended time off June 1st. So I know Southwest was saying, hey, they likely weren't going to start hiring until next year, but judging by the way they're calling people back off those extended leaves, I'm not 100% sure on that. Allegiant just opened up Des Moines, Iowa. So for all you guys out in Iowa, Allegiant's now there. But they did also open an Austin base, which I assume will probably be very competitive.
Oh yeah.
But they're looking at potentially hiring this year, June, July timeframe.
They still have guys on furlough though, right? At Allegiant, or do you know?
No, they're all back.
Oh, they are.
They're all back. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, they're all back. Let me see. FedEx is actively interviewing. I mean, they're going to bring on an additional about 550 this year. They're taking on about 50 a month. So far as of this recording, through I think March, it's been about 110 so far they've hired. UPS for the military folks, they now count T6 time as multi-engine turbine time. They haven't been 100% clear as to what they think about Pilatuses and Caravans and some of the other single engines like T-34s that the military flies, but they're looking at taking on 225 this year, about 25 to 40 a month. They've hired about 80 so far. For any of the folks, if their application went active and it's frozen, that means that they are actively looking at your stuff and you need to start thinking about interview prepping because you're probably a little bit behind. If your stuff goes inactive, it's usually one of two reasons. Either the application was filled out incorrectly, which is why you want to have it reviewed before you hit the submit button. Or number two, you don't meet their competitive minimums. Atlas, same thing. They're taking about 450 this year, about 30 to 40 a month. They've hired about 90 total so far. So it's absolutely crazy over there. And then the legacies. United has been putting announcement after announcement after announcement out. I think it's May 11th are the class dates for the conditional job offers for the folks from last year. They're interviewing early May. We had a number of clients that are off the street hires get the Hogan test late last week. And now they're already in the interview pool and they've been offered early May dates. They're talking about 300 folks they're bringing on.
Oh, wow.
Delta had their major advanced entitlement.
Hold on. I have a question. I can wrap my head around the ULCC's hiring because leisure travel's coming back hard and fast, right?
Yep.
I can get the cargo guys hiring because e-commerce has gone nuts since the pandemic and that's a flourishing industry. What I can't understand quite yet is that all we've heard is business travel is not really going to return till 23. Seems to be the consensus of the quote unquote experts, right? And then we have this international travel that really isn't doing much. Yeah. So how are the legacies hiring? I feel like everybody's like gearing up for this big world battle over the limited market share. Is that what's happening? Or can you explain this? Because I don't.
I think it's a couple of different things. So if you take a look at the ultra low costs, it's pretty. Their training profile is a bit easier, right? Because you got one fleet type. You take a look at an airline that has 3 or 4 or 7 or 9 different fleet types, right? The time to get that training up and running is just going to be more delayed. So how much of it is they're actually getting prepared for summer 2022?
Oh,
is the first question.
How quick can you react kind of deal?
Yeah, I mean, their training department can only handle so much. It's not like there's excess sims sitting all around.
But they didn't actually reshuffle guys as far as a big training reshuffle because they kind of just put everyone on the sidelines for a while instead of downgrading and doing all that, right?
Precisely. But that's why, like, you take a look at Delta and every single one of their UNA guys is going to be trained by, I think it's like August. But they're getting put through a short course. But anybody new you bring on that has to go through a full course, they only have so many 7.3 sims. They only have so many, 777 sims or 7.6 sims, depending on the company you're talking about. So depending on who they're placing where and how their internal bid system works, how many people are you going to have move off a fleet that they're on inside the company and then hire someone new to bring them in, right? So if you have, let's say you have a spot on 777, right? And you hire a new hire in, you put them on the 777, that's one training slot. But if you have a spot on the 777 and you have a 7.6 guy takes a 777 slot and then a 7.3 guy takes a 7.6 slot and then the new hire takes a 7.3 slot, that one 777 slot just created 3 training events.
Yeah.
So at Southwest doesn't have that problem. Would you like to be a 7.3 or a 7.3? Right? I mean, it's a much easier training footprint. But the other part of it too is how much of them smell blood in the water and are going after market share.
That's what I see that with the one side of the industry for sure. And then the other things too, like Southwest has launched all these new destinations. And now when travel comes back, they're going to have to support those with frequency and things. So that might mean expansion.
Yeah. And you're watching the partnerships with, I don't know if you saw Spirit was filing a complaint against American and JetBlue.
Yeah.
For non-competitive practices, which is that a joint venture or is that some type of artificial scope relief through a joint venture?
Tomato, James.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I was in the American system working, at their feeder. And I remember this was like 10 years ago. They were fighting over 15 years ago. They were fighting over the JetBlue and saying that was like an end around for scope. So I think it's a classic maneuver in their playbook. If you look at this, so you're almost saying like ULCCs are hiring for flying now and the majors are hiring for flying that's going to be maybe a year or two away. Is that kind of a good way to think of it? Well,
somewhat, but also somewhat too. You got to remember they're looking at anywhere between, 90% and American. There was an article out last week. They're at 150 to 400% in future bookings. So, I think a portion of it is for future, but I think a portion of it is for present. The
timing is also really interesting for leisure travel because, of course, that curve always peaks here in the summer, right? comes up and then down. And so now it's kind of like things are opening up and everyone's trying to react quickly to take advantage of the summer leisure travel. But then in August, and everybody goes back to school, then I think that starts to come down. At least I know that's kind of what the curve always looks like at Southwest. We're always jamming in the summer and a little bit overstaffed in the winter and a little understaffed in the summer. And it's trying to.
You also have to think about who's going to be spending a lot of this money, right? So there is a subset of people that are probably in their, let's say, early 30s to early 50s, who through the entire pandemic actually ended up doing better. And there's two reasons for that. Number one, none of them lost their jobs, right? Meaning like if you had a dual income household, neither of the two people in the household lost their jobs, and their expenses went down because they weren't eating out. They weren't traveling. There's all these things they weren't spending money on. So now it's a year later. They've got a stockpile of cash.
Don't forget a fresh stimulus check too in the mail.
Yeah. They've been on basically house arrest, right? And now they're looking at like, I need to get out of my house. I need to go do something. I don't know what it's, because you guys obviously are in Arizona. I'm in the Midwest, but I mean, people really are not very concerned about 6 feet or a mask right now. I don't know what it's like out in Arizona, but
people in Arizona really were never really that concerned about 6 feet or a mask.
Yeah, I didn't think so. So, and my point in that is not from a judgmental standpoint of right or wrong. It's from a standpoint of just observing and going, how comfortable people are going to be to get on an airplane. Well, if they'll go to a restaurant, or I mean, there's like a small hole in the wall bar, like 2 blocks away from where I live, and they were shutting down. It was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And so when Eileen and I went walking by it, it was packed. I mean, like, everyone's standing like sardines in a can, no one wearing mat. Like, so if they're going to be willing to do that, I think the middle seat's going to be okay with them. And Delta obviously proved this week that the middle seat's not that big of a deal.
Yep. So we interrupted you there. We were talking about United there, and then for the majors update, anything for Delta or American?
Yeah. So with Delta, I mean, you have that major advanced entitlement that came out. I think it's 1,036 upgrades to captain. It'll be interesting to see how many basic vacancies are left at the end of that. I would not be surprised between about 400 to 500. So Delta was saying once again, hey, we're not going to be hiring until next year. I'm not 100% sold on that. It's conjecture, right? Because it depends on, do the future bookings stay the way they are, and how's their training footprint? There's a whole bunch of contingencies in that, but very, very possible. American's been very tight-lipped. It's very hard to say what is going on over there. I know you got the joint venture going on. Are they going to do anything with their regional partners like they did back in the early 2000s? Jets for jobs, stuff like that. And once again, this is all conjecture, but they're very quiet about what's going on over there. Regionals are hiring like crazy. And you're going to start seeing new partnerships for Aviate come out here soon. I would not be surprised to start seeing them for other airlines as well, at both the legacy and low cost, where you're going to start seeing these announcements come out of, hey, we're partnering with XYZ company to create a flow program into our airline. But I mean, Endeavor's doing a lot of hiring. Air Wisconsin's doing a boatload of hiring. Commuter's been hiring the entire time. PSA, I think GoJet, the chief pilot, walked into ground school the other day and said 40 per month every month for the next year. They'll be basically double in size.
Man, isn't this great? I mean, just months ago, remember we were interviewing
weeks.
I mean, it's just,
yeah.
What a wild business.
Remember the one we did almost this time last year where we all had to go to therapy afterwards?
Yeah, exactly.
We all decided not to talk to each other for 3 months.
Craziness.
Well, wait, I remember one time we did an episode. We're about halfway through, and then we're just like, we got to stop the recording. We never even aired the episode. It was too depressing.
It's horrible.
Yeah, it's
It
crazy.
looked like it looked like we'd gone 10 rounds with Mike Tyson. The other thing that a lot of folks are not paying attention to right now is corporate, man. Specifically in the light jet market, sub 2 million, phenoms, citations, I think they're getting like full price offers in like 2 or 3 days. It's like the real estate market. Super mid-size doing pretty well. You can't find a Challenger 300 right now. And then folks jumping up from super mids to large cabin. We had said this last year, but in corporate, this feels a lot more like September 11th than it did 2008, where the jet is looked as a safety tool for, I think, a multitude of reasons. Number one, you can keep your folks together inside of a bubble. So if we have rolling surges, they're likely have an easier time moving around. The route structures for the airlines are changing like crazy right now. So depending on where your business is based, you may or may not have reliable service. And number two, if you want to do any type of international traveling, you're likely going to have an easier time getting that opened up for corporate than you are going to be for the airlines.
Yeah, I think that's part of the puzzle. Also, the general economy has been flushed with $5 trillion of liquidity, and most of the private jet owners and customers are business owners, and so they've all done very well too through the pandemic. So
plus the tax holiday.
Yeah. Plus there was a big bonus depreciation end inside, and so.
The other thing with it, though, too, that's creating some difficulties is, think about it. You want to buy an airplane and there's a beautiful Citation Excel in Canada. You can't get into the country to go see it. So you're restricted to buying things inside the United States.
Yeah.
You're not buying it in the UK.
Yeah. That just squeezes the short supply there already is even further.
Yep.
There's just a short supply from the buy-up plus that. That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
And the huge sucking sound that is going to come in the next 2 months of CFIs and aerial survey folks getting sucked up to the regionals, right, is going to mean that all the folks that are at the entry-level positions that have been really struggling to find jobs are all of a sudden going to find, hey, can you take 9-10 students?
Right. Okay. So, James, this is the perfect segue. I want to do a little rapid-fire role-playing with you here.
Knock yourself out.
All right. Scenario 1, I am a young CFI. What should I be focusing on right now to get ready for this transition, which a couple months ago I didn't even think was going to happen. And now it looks like, boy, this could happen at any minute, transition to that next job.
Proximity to flight school owners. So I don't care if you walk into the flight school and they tell you we're not hiring. Go back every month. Bring brownies. Stop by with a mop and clean things. I don't care what you have to do to make sure you are around that flight school owner, because what's going to happen? Well, because
just say that's what United said last month.
Yeah. That flight school owner is going to have 2 or 3 CFIs walk in on the same day and go, I just got hired by GoJet PSA in Air Wisconsin. Right. I just got hired by Commuter and Endeavor, and they're just going to quit. And the flight school owner is going to go from overstaffed to understaffed really quickly. I would be doing the exact same thing with aerial survey folks. I would be reaching out to them on LinkedIn. If you're near there and their operation is open and you can physically walk in, I would make sure they knew my face and my name and I was there monthly.
Okay, I'm a 1,500-hour CFI. The regionals are starting to hire now. What's the main thing I should be thinking about?
Number one is making sure your applications are up to date. So unless you have a specific limitation, right? Like you have a sick parent and you have to live in a certain area, apply to every regional that has an application open. Don't waste time now trying to figure out which job you're going to take. Get as many job offers as you can. And then after you have 3 or 4 job offers in hand, then take the time to pick the best one for you. Because otherwise what happens is people go, well, I want to go to SkyWest first, Endeavor second, and then I'll consider all the rest of them. And they end up sitting in line waiting for one of those 2 to call them. Meanwhile, their buddies are getting hired left and right over here.
I've had that discussion with my friend Dylan here many times about he gets too worked up before there's anything to get worked up about. I said, listen, don't say no to something when there's nothing to say no to yet. Go interview, go get a job offer. And that,
yeah, that
one step at a time.
There's that, but I think the thing that people panic about is it's like, well, am I wasting their time? No, because you don't know if you have the job. If they called you up and said, we're going to give you a job next week, do you want it? And you said, well, I'll give you a call back in a month. Okay, yeah, you're wasting their time, but they're bringing you in for an interview. You really genuinely don't know what the outcome is going to be. And remember, you can always say no after you have multiple offers in hand, and you can do it respectfully. I had about 4 calls yesterday of people that wanted to turn down jobs, some in corporate, some in the airlines, and they wanted to do it respectfully because they wanted to leave the door open. And I helped them craft a very nice, quick note, and they got thank yous back from all the recruiters. So the no does not have to be a, F you. The no can be a, hey, look, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity, but at this time, yada, 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 yada. So the big thing is don't be picky until you have multiple offers in hand.
Okay, I'm a regional FO. I've been recalled from furlough. I'm starting to fly again. I'm looking at these different regionals wondering, am I going to get upgraded at my airline first? Should I try and jump ship and go somewhere where I think there's a faster upgrade? What do you advise to those guys maybe in that 1,500 to 2,500 hour range?
So there's a couple different things. The first one is they really have to do a self-assessment and take a look at what their background and experience is. Because there's a lot of gaps that can be filled likely inside their existing company. And if they lack outside the cockpit stuff, they need to start looking at getting involved internally inside their company. They need to get involved in the training department, safety department, union committees, mentorship. There is an endless supply of things you can get involved in. And I get it, right? It's not like you can walk in and go, hey guys, I want to be chief pilot for the next year. Yeah. Like I'm not talking that stuff, right? I mean, hey, I want to volunteer to be a check airman. Yeah, I get it. That's not going to happen, right? I want to volunteer to be a captain.
I will tribute.
But there are, yeah, exactly. But there's a lot of internal things you can work on that build really solid experience. That's number one. Number two, they need to really go through their applications and make sure those are squared away for each of the airlines they want to apply to. And they need to get on LinkedIn and start getting their letters of recommendation. Now, when you get a letter of recommendation, I get it. Most people call up their buddy and their buddy goes, hey, write it for me. Don't do that. You need to call your buddy up and have him write a recommendation that gives specific examples of how you've added value, right? So for instance, if I write a letter of recommendation that goes, hey, I'm writing to recommend Dylan for a first officer position on the 737. He's an amazing person. He has great communication. That's a really horrible letter of recommendation, right? If I write one that says, Dylan's the guy I go to when my back's against the wall. Just last week, XYZ went wrong, and here's 4 things he did to fix it. If it wasn't for him, the whole thing would have been garbage. Right? I could write you a letter of recommendation that's a paragraph that gives specific examples where somebody goes, oh, he actually is valuable. So the recommendations have to be specific and they have to talk about adding value. And then lastly, how there's all these events, like all these companies are putting on their events, like a first officer event or United's going, they were speaking at NGPA and all these things. Okay. So people always show up to these events and they ask the same questions every time. What do I need to get hired? How do I make myself competitive? Do I have enough? I have this and this and this in my background. Will you hire me? Don't waste your time doing that. They're not going to answer it. But what you can do is you can write down the names of all the representatives for the company that were there and then hop on LinkedIn and use that to get a conversation started with them. We use it all the time and it works very well because it's a very natural way to have an honest, open conversation because you have some type of shared experience. You do those things, application squared away, making sure you're filling in your experience gaps, you get your letters of recommendation and you volunteer inside the company, you're moving yourself up the pile.
All right. I'm a corporate guy. I was planning on making the jump to 121. I got sidelined a year ago. It's time to get the wheels turning again. I have all my apps in and everything. What do I need to do now?
Yeah, so the corporate one's a little more complicated because it depends on, do you have if you've been at a 135 operator, a lot of those guys have been going at 15, 20 days a month, right? So they are just getting run ragged and their mentality is like, get me out of here. If you have like a really good Part 91 gig where, you're flying either little to a decent amount, but you're being paid very well, treated very well, so on and so forth, it's a very different story, right? If you're effectively at one of the 135s where, and this is not representative obviously of all 135s, but I'm going to go to extreme just to make the scenario easy, but you're at a 135 and you're being paid, whatever, $60,000, $70,000 a year and you're working 25 days a month. That's a pretty easy decision, right? Because you're effectively working a worse schedule than a regional for slightly more money. Right. So those folks are going to be doing effectively the same thing a regional pilot that is trying to jump up, right? It's the getting the letters of recommendation. The big thing right now, if you want to go to Southwest or you want to go to Delta, even though they're not hiring right now, you need to be updating your application. I mean, United just put out that email the other day that said the people that we're interviewing right now are the ones that have been updating their application, right? So United's the first one to hire. So congratulations, go update your application. But you have these other companies too that are going to be hiring. Get in there and start updating the stuff because they look at it. But if you're a Part 91 person, that's where the strategy really comes in, because you got to really figure out, is it worth sitting and waiting out to see how this stuff balances itself out, or do I want to jump now? And I know that may sound crazy, but there's a lot of optimism right now. Let's wait to see what happens in the fall. And I don't say that in terms of something good or bad is going to happen, but we have the beginning of a trend. So let's see how it goes through the summer. What happens in the holiday season? What happens in Thanksgiving? What happens at Christmas? What starts happening in the international markets as the UK start opening? Because that's going to be a much better indicator of which is going to be more stable.
Last one. You are a Part 91 pilot, maybe a 135 pilot, and you're starting to see, okay, a couple years ago, we had leverage. We were starting to negotiate pay increases, quality of life increases. We've lost a lot of that leverage over the last year. Maybe some of us have taken a pay cut even. We're optimistic, maybe we'll be able to get some of those gains back. Those conversations, they probably can't start yet. Is that something that's maybe a year or two away? What do you recommend there?
The conversation may not be starting, but the preparing the owner for it is, right? So like getting on the airplane and be like, hey man, did you hear how Bob's airplane sitting on the ground because Tom quit to go to Southwest? That's crazy, man. Wow. Insane. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's keep, you start bringing up what's going on in the market, but you also have to wait for that opportunity when they're under high pressure. The problem that folks have when there's a negotiation, they see the other person under pressure, is they try and alleviate that pressure from them, which destroys their leverage, right? If you're in a situation where you're freaking out because your car doesn't have enough gas, right? You're out on the side of the road. You're with your kids. You ran your car to gas. You're in the middle of nowhere. And I have a gallon in my car and I paid $2 for the gallon. Well, that gallon of gas is worth $15 to you. Now, if I want to be a good Samaritan, right? Maybe I'll give you the gas for free. But if like we're in a negotiation, right? I need to point out the discomfort that you're going through. And then the way to alleviate that discomfort is for you to buy that gas from me for $15. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. The subtle beginnings of negotiation, I think, is a very delicate art that I remember sometimes, because I had a pretty good relationship with the previous principal and we would joke around and we were 91 and he knew, he would joke and say, oh, yeah, well, maybe we should put this thing on charter. And I remember we're sitting in San Diego at the international airport and the big one. And he goes, yeah, maybe joking around, maybe we should go and put this on charter and, use it some of the time. And I go, I'll just go over there. And he goes, over where? And I point to the other side of the airport at the Southwest airplane. I'm like, yeah, just over there. And sometimes when you come back with the smack back, and it's pretty funny to leave someone just like, oh, well.
Yeah, no, that's when someone goes, hey, maybe I want to put this on charter. You go, hey, no big deal. Do you mind just giving me 2 weeks heads up notice? Because I get about 3 job offers a month I turn down. And I just want to know that I need to start looking at them again. But I just need 2 weeks. You don't need to give me a ton of time.
We're selling the power negotiation course over at Eagle Careers. It's very volatile. It's high risk, but
it actually isn't, because like Max said, if you do it in the right tone, in the right way, you got to know how to do it. Yeah. Right. I mean, we're coming up with an overly simplistic example that's obviously overly adversarial, but that's obviously what someone that is okay with it. There's a lot of subtle ways to just point out you're really just trying to raise their awareness of what's going on in the industry. And by doing that, it keeps the boundary in place.
Yeah. And oftentimes, if you just try and tell somebody, oh, this is what's going on, they immediately think that you're just telling them that, for your own benefit. But if you say,
the Wall Street, I'll grab the Wall Street Journal.
Contract pilot to cover vacation because they all got hired by the airlines. It's ridiculous. There's nobody around.
Yeah. Dude, I'll grab the Wall Street Journal, open it to an article about pilot shortage, and put that right on their desk. That'll be when they get, or not on the desk, when they get on the seat, that's going to be the article that sits right there. Like
paper open. I mean, that's so good.
Yeah, exactly.
And just put a smiley face.
Yeah.
I have a question. It's kind of a strange one. So you read the big announcement by United about their diversity goals that they're trying to set, and this and that. So
it's created some controversy.
Yeah,
recently.
little controversy online, and you've seen kind of what's gone on. So I think a lot of people are like, don't really know how to react. My question is this: what's to stop somebody from just marking some sort of ethnicity on an application, just so they feel like they're not, being reverse discriminated? Like, is that a thing? Did that happen? Do they weed people out? Can they check that and verify? Like that seems like that's going to happen. And I'm just curious, has it happened? What's the deal?
So here's my thoughts on this stuff. The big thing that seems to be getting attention right now is the fact that they're going to hire 5,000 pilots in the next, I think it was 10 years, if I remember correctly.
No, they're going to
train.
They said train.
Sorry, train 5,000 pilots in the next 10 years. And 50% of those, they're saying, will be women and people of color. Okay. So that's through their Aviate flight school. Here's the deal. They're really light on details.
Oh, for sure.
So it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to do this. It really does not get my attention until you tell me, how are you going to do it? So when you say you're going to give people, like, they're going to have the opportunity to dig themselves into $75,000.
That is exactly my point. We'll talk about
that's
this.
Why it didn't say hire. It said we were trained.
Yeah.
We'll see if,
But then the other thing is, the requirement to have a college education is still there. So let's take race and gender out of the conversation just for a moment. They're massive players in this area, but how many people would be a solid pilot that cannot afford to both go into a debt for $75,000 and then a $50,000 college education on top of it? Right now, when you put in race and gender, there's a whole bunch of different complexities that go into that I promise is going to be way longer than what we can talk about. So the point is, everybody's celebrating the diversity initiative, but we don't have the details on how are they going to do it, because they may roll out this beautiful program and a whole bunch of women and a whole bunch of people of color don't participate because it's not really actually going to be possible for them. Possible may not be the right word. They may not be comfortable with the risk, because if they're not guaranteed a job, if there's no, like, you're going to go into $125,000, $130,000 worth of debt. Take a look at everybody just got laid off, right? They can't afford to pay that debt when they're out on the street for a year if they've only been in a regional for 2 years. Can they afford to service the debt if they're only making $30,000 a year at a regional?
Yeah, no, I'm with you for sure, 100%. But the problem is, if you're a guy that's getting ready to apply for a major and you look at it on the surface and be like, what do you think? The first thing you think about it, how's this going to affect me, right?
The other side of it that I think is probably more confusing, and I think is more confusing right now, is the people that are in that in between. It's like, hey, they've got 2,000, 2,500 hours. They've been flying at a regional. They did the flight instruction. Now they're out on the street. And it's like, man, you're putting all this effort and energy over here. I'm already qualified. I've had people of color call me up and go, am I going to be passed over for a job by somebody who's 0 hour because of this program? So it's not like I just have middle-aged white guys calling me up going, hey, am I going to get screwed by this? There's like women that are calling, people of color that are calling and going, wait a second. I already sunk myself into debt. I took the horrible job to get the minimum flight time. I paid for my own ATP. I've gone to the regional and was showing up to work on time. And now this program rolls out. Am I going to have a shot? Because now I'm not current, and you're flowing all these people in, right? Potentially to them, it's like, are they going to be flowed in ahead of me? Now, I think, like I said, they're light on the details in terms of when the stuff is starting. I have a hard time seeing how they're going to get someone from zero to the right seat of a United aircraft ahead of anybody that's a current pilot. But we don't have enough details to know. So the point is, the way these programs are being rolled out, I get the celebrating the diversity and the inclusion, but number one, we've laced our shoes up for the marathon. We didn't run it yet. It's great to set goals, but until we start achieving those goals, we're just talking. Number two, I think some of the ways the emphasis on some of these programs is being done, and I'm not picking a company in particular because every company has one of these programs. Not every, but there's like 7 or 8 of these programs right now. It's like they're going out and talking about their 0 to hero program to people that are fully qualified. They can't afford to put food on their table right now. It can be a little tone deaf at times, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. But I think your point about the debt, that's the thing that I immediately saw was like, man, without any of these details and getting excited about these programs is like, are we really just opening up the door to sell dreams to people that maybe can't afford it? And
what's the difference? That's all. That's basically what these programs all are. That none of them guarantee a job.
Exactly.
So, well, no, I'll give you a difference. So if they say, okay, here's the deal, you're going to go to our Aviate program and it's going to cost $75,000, right? Okay, great. And then you're going to go to our partner university and you only have to get a 2-year degree. You don't have to get a 4-year degree. So it cuts the cost down even more, right? Okay. So maybe they're out the door for $100,000 and United says, okay, we're going to give it to you at a 0 or 1% interest just to cover the cost of the loan. And by the way, it will be garnished from a United carrier's paycheck over the course of whatever, 10 or 15 years, right? Yeah, 15 years is a standard student loan. And any time that you are off property, you have what is it called? A forbearance? Where like basically you don't have to pay the loan and it's not accruing debt. Right. Right. Now you have the individual in the program is assuming a level of responsibility and risk, right? Because they have to stick with they have skin in the game. Yeah. Right. But you're not putting them into a situation where if you lay them off, you're literally sunk 3 generations of their family. But if they come out and go, hey, look, we're going to give you access to loans through JP Morgan Chase that you otherwise would not have had access to. So now you have the privilege of getting a student loan at 7% interest variable. Right. And if this doesn't work out, it's all on you. All you just did was strap them with debt. Because take a look at the past 20 years. If somebody participated in that program starting in 2000, they'd not be in a good spot right now because of all the time they would have spent on the street and all the pay cuts that were
But that's the same position that a lot of our buddies from Embry-Riddle have put themselves in without any sort of affiliation anywhere. And the one thing that when you put those big obstacles and the big risk in like that is it does garnish people that are highly motivated and truly want to be in aviation and they're willing to put it all on the line to do it. And I think that results in high quality people because you have to want it bad to be able to put yourself in that debt, make that little money initially and go through the trenches.
Yeah, the question is not, is the person willing to put themselves through risk? The question is, if they fail, is the penalty so bad that they won't get back up, which prevents them from taking risk in the first place?
And that failure is largely could not even be under their control. It might not be, well, I don't like this career, I'm walking away. I'm furloughed. And, that's why I did the upset recovery training last week. And there was a bunch of the Destination 225 folks in my class. And, they're on their way and sounds like a cool program. And, I didn't talk to him too much, but I just said, hey, just so you guys know, I've only been in the business less than 20 years and I've already had 3 black swan events happen. So
like whatever the track is you think you're on right now, just,
Did
be
you
aware.
then immediately refer them to hard landings and
Yeah. I mean,
begin their education?
The problem becomes if you're trying to bring someone into aviation that already comes from a situation of no means, they don't have, their family cannot co-sign the loan, right? Okay. They don't, their parents do not have jobs that provide healthcare. They're, let's call it an average student in a school district that's an underperforming school district, right? So they've got a lot of headwinds. So now you put them into this program and go, hey, we're going to load you up with $125,000 worth of debt. If that does not work out, it's not like they're going to go out and become a computer programmer, right? They're just loaded down. Aviation is one of those unique skills that, and we all learn this about 2 years out of every 10, that if no one will hire you to fly an airplane, it's not really a transferable skill. Right. So if you sink yourself into $125,000 worth of debt to become a pilot, and maybe you get all the way to commercial and then you go, hey, you're not making it through the training. You decide you don't want to do it anymore. They, Republic's Lift program had this, right? They guaranteed them CFI jobs and then coronavirus hit. And now all of a sudden you spent all this money, you have these ratings, you're ready to go to work and there's no job there. And they're going, yeah, but you still owe the debt. So the question you got to ask yourself is, what is the average paying job in their community? And could they afford to service the debt on that job? So if you have a high school kid that goes into one of these programs and we have a black swan event, and now they're in, let's say, whatever, $75,000 worth of debt. When I got laid off from NetJets in 2010, I was applying to the Verizon store to sell cell phones. So to me, when I look at it is, can you afford to pay the debt on a job at McDonald's or Burger King or the Verizon store or Chipotle or like whatever the unskilled labor job is that you can get in your community? And the answer is probably not. And so that level of risk can be it can be a barrier that's so high that the person says, you know what, I'm not even going to try. There has to be some type, they have to have some type of skin in the game. It always works best when both parties have something in it.
yeah. And that's why your point, we don't have any details on any of this. And that's why, and these programs seems like they could change at any time too, so it just seems like a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, they were like in the United program, they're touting how there's 2.4 million being put into the program, which, don't get me wrong, is great. But take 2.4 million and divide that by the quantity of money they say it takes for you to become a pilot, right? You're talking, it's about 30 or 35 pilots that covers. This is like, if you take a look at what it costs to make a pilot, it's exorbitantly expensive. So if you want to take 1,500 or 2,500 pilots, and it's going to cost $100,000 to $125,000 each, and they're solely, and the individual is solely responsible for it, and the company's not providing them any level of guarantee, which I'm not saying United or any other companies are doing that. I'm saying they have a lot of work to do to figure out how do they structure the incentives in the program so that they get people to join while also leaving enough skin in the game that there's an incentive for them to show up and perform and study. Right? They're not going to come in and go, hey, look, we're going to finance $125,000 out of our own pocket per pilot. I highly doubt they're going to do that. But if they come in and say, hey, look, it's going to be basically a 0% interest loan, and we're going to make sure that if you're ever out of work, you're not on the hook for paying it until you come back to work. And, we're going to provide all these additional resources to make sure that you're successful as long as you show up and work. It can be a really successful program. It can be a failure, though, if you go, hey, you've won the privilege to douse yourself in debt, and all of a sudden nobody shows up to sign up. Then it's just, it's very embarrassing.
Well, the big thing too is that the carriers have to assess how big the risk is of having business and not being able to service it because you don't have pilots. And that's going to drive, I think, how much risk they take or how much they invest in these programs personally, because, like you said, it's always better in anything when everybody has some skin in the game. And if that's the case, I bet the standards will be higher on the pilots as they're coming. Like, look, this guy's or gals is not likely to make it, and since they're footing the bill, they might ask people to leave then sooner than they would if the students are footing the bill, which is probably better in everybody's interest, in everyone's best interest. So, yeah, like we keep saying, the next few years is going to be very interesting in this business from multiple perspectives, and I'm excited to watch.
This isn't new, by the way. If I remember correctly, United was doing this in like the 50s.
Well, how
60s.
does it work with the foreign airlines that have been doing this forever? Lufthansa.
They have multi-crew pilot licenses and stuff like that. It's different.
Oh, you mean financing though?
No, just how does those programs, just the bird's eye view of who pays for it? Like,
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know enough
you're not
about those
helping
programs.
Lufthansa people get hired, James? You haven't broadened your horizons?
No.
Yes.
What is Raven in German?
I mean, Lufthansa people, one thing. German kids from high school looking to go to Lufthansa, not our target market.
Yeah.
The big thing that people need to remember about these programs that are coming out, the pilot pathway programs, regardless of whether they're talking about diversity or inclusion, they're pretty light on details. And so before people start jumping down the rabbit hole, they need to wait for the details to come out so they fully understand what's going on in the program.
Well said.
There's got to be some sort of contract, though, right? When you sign up that says what everybody's duties and responsibilities, and
that's
the relationship.
Yeah, but watch, you're going to, what everyone needs to be mindful of is the company broadcasting. You have to wait and see. The proof is in the pudding. It will, if they set the target and it's very attractive to their target audience, which in this case is at least 50% of them is going to be what they call women and people of color, right? Then they have the program designed right? But if they put out this program and it's not attracting women and people of color, then the program isn't designed right.
Well, here's the other thing. We've all been in the industry for 20 plus years. We know the right questions to ask. We've seen this. If you're rolling out this people that are at zero, you hand them they're not even going to know, like, regardless of their background. I think that's a good place to wrap it up for now. I have a feeling there's going to be much more news here in the coming weeks. So we're going to get some nice industry update music for next time James comes on. Have a nice
and that's all for industry update with James Onieal.
That's right. Well, James, we certainly appreciate your time. The tons of folks are going to need help with resume stuff, interview prep stuff, app review stuff. Obviously, you guys provide all of those services, ravencareers.com. And if folks want to get a hold of you directly, what's the best way to do it?
Right now, it's through the website because they can get direct access to my calendar if they fill out the contact form. We're getting flooded, so it's just please give us a little bit of patience.
Okay, appreciate it. All right, James.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
We appreciate your industry update.
Dun, dun, dun. All right, that's going to do it for episode 52, the 21.5 Professional Pilots Podcast. Thanks so much to James Onieal for calling in.
And a special thanks to our sponsors, Harvey Watt, for all your loss of license and life insurance needs, harveywatt.com, and Advanced Aircrew Academy for all of your aviation educational needs, aircrewacademy.com.
And bribery education needs.
And bribery education.
Remember, you can bribe us on the website by making a donation. 215podcast.com down at the bottom. It's the donate button. I'd love to get you one of those tumblers. You can fill it with whatever you like.
Should we do like a tiered tumbler system? Like a tumbler and then a...
yes.
Up to the 32-ounce big dog?
We can do... the problem is you can't set up like a Yeti store where I can't preload, so I have to order it and then ship it out.
Yeah, what's the problem?
I'll make you whatever you want. Bribery.
Anything you want.
Yeah. We'll get you the big Yeti cool, like the real
the
huge...
1 gallon Yeti deal like I have.
Yeah. I was just thinking of that today. No, I'm going to make the hard-sided cooler, and I'll put whatever you want in there. We'll put a picture of Ted on there smoking a cigarette at a crap stable in St. Martin. I have that picture. It's incredible.
I have that memory. Yeah. So,
anyways,
Oh,
Yeah.
Should we give a moose update? Big milestone yesterday.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Quickly, though. I got some feedback that said...
No one wants it?
No, they said, love the moose updates. Keep them shorter, though.
Oh, all right. I'll keep it brief. Went and picked up the motor in Kingman after I watched it run on the test stand, hauled it home, and hung it on the beast yesterday. So,
And for the kids at home that don't know what kind of... I mean, this is not a Lycoming.
yeah, I know. It's a M14P 9-cylinder Russian supercharged radial engine. So it should be like, I got some higher compression piston stuff done. So it should be like a 410 or 15 horse.
It's...
Should make lots of noise and a lot of smoke though. So it should be cool.
It's going to be pretty cool.
That's it.
That's
it's getting
it.
close.
I love it.
We'll put a video of it when it
Actually,
does first
we
start.
had a listener request a video of the engine
initial-
running. Yeah.
All right.
So we're going to get a video of that. Should be good. That's it. Follow us on the socials at 215 Podcast. Of course, connect with us on LinkedIn for all of the latest updates. Email us info at 215podcast for your 215podcast.com for your flight advice needs and everything else. We'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. But until then, remember,
Flexibility is the key to air power. Adios.
adios.
Vanguard.
The statements made in this show are our own opinions and do not reflect, nor were they under any direction from any of our employers.